Welcome to our channel Scary Sagas, where we bring you the most amazing true horror stories. Today, we have bone-chilling stories that will make your blood run cold. These stories are based on real events and have been passed down among the people. Are you ready to hear the ghastly ghosts and demonic spirits that still roam the deserted halls and corridors? When I was 12 years old, this incident occurred many years ago. In the 1990s, my brothers and I made the decision to ride our bikes to the neighborhood playground. There weren't many, if any, parents at the park that day because it was back when parents left kids to their own devices. We threw our bikes down and hurried over to the youngsters. There were both boys and girls on the whirly merry-go-round when I climbed on. I thought he was one of the parents when a man appeared out of nowhere. I recall his horrible comb-over, scraggly mustache, and baggy attire. We all laughed as he pushed us around. But I noticed that every time I turned to face him, he grabbed me by the hips and squeezed while pushing us more and more quickly. He kept his gaze fixed on me, and I could see that he was a pervert who posed a threat. I immediately stepped off and headed for the wooden playhouse. Despite the fact that I was a little older than the other kids, I climbed the ladder and joined them in their games. Following us, he descended the level we were on. I observed that he was gazing up at our skirts through the wooden floor slats. Once more, I got away and sprinted to my brothers. Several children heard me telling them about the man and concurred that he was a pervert. In the end, we all yelled at him and threatened to call the police. When we were leaving to head home, my brothers pointed to a tree where the man was climbing up after a small child. It was hilarious to watch him run off. We screamed again, but he continued to ignore us. To escape him, the child in the tree was getting higher and higher. We notified our parents as soon as we arrived home, and they immediately phoned the police. We lost track of him forever, but I'll never forget the terrible expression in those vicious eyes. I and my roommate felt it would be amusing to reside in an old dorm because we were normal college students living on campus. Everything went okay for the first few months. Then a few weeks ago our lights started flickering and suddenly turning out, which was quite frustrating and unsettling. The online problem that prevented us from requesting maintenance to fix the lights made the situation even more frustrating. We finally layered up with a ton of blankets last night to be warm. I have no trouble falling asleep, and since I experience lucid dreams, I can quickly wake up. I awoke later that night when I heard screaming coming from the hallway. It was my roommate, who cried that she needed to enter the room immediately and was in a panic since her key wasn't working. Before I could open the door, I spotted her back in bed asleep as I stumbled toward it. I chose to ignore it and go back to sleep, reasoning that everything had been a dream. I double-checked my roommate once I was in bed. She was still sound sleeping in her bed, but a shadow that emerged beneath the door caught my attention. I knelt down and noticed boots immediately across from our door. I was first relieved when I saw the boots go before hearing the staircase door open. Because the lights weren't functioning, I turned on my lamp and spent nearly an hour hiding beneath the covers, terrified and wondering whether the person wearing the boots would return. There's no chance it was one of us because nobody can enter the girls' floor without a student ID, and security is stringent about shutting up after midnight. The only thing that sprang to me was that homeless people occasionally camp out in basements, which is much creepier. The boots were unquestionably men's boots. While I was home sitting for a friend years ago, This incident occurred. Growing up, I spent a lot of time at her house, which she inherited from her mother. She was one of those terrible mothers who believes that no one is good enough for their children, not even friends. Therefore, I never liked her mother, because I did well in school and got better grades. She was even tougher on me. Being good friends, my pal never gave a damn about that nonsense. While I can't say I was too saddened by her mother's passing, I was there for her and recognized what a dreadful thing it was to go through. I never really believed in ghosts or the supernatural, so I didn't hesitate as I waved farewell to my buddy and her partner while standing on the front porch to visit his father. They were on a week-long journey to New York. About 3 years had elapsed since her mother's passing. I had the feeling that I was being observed since that first night. I continued receiving the same sensation I had the other times I had been there. It sounded as though hate and derision were mixing in the eyes' laser-red pupils. The first incident took place in, of all places, the restroom. I felt something fall on my back as I was about to leave the room. After rolling down my back, it felt like someone had thrown a roll of toilet paper at my head. I whirled around, but there was nothing and nobody there. I dismissed it and walked out of the room. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I heard someone walking behind me. That was strange, since the mother of my buddy would plod around in fluffy slippers. My body began to shiver. I looked in all directions, but nobody was there. The following morning, I was smoking a cigarette outside while drinking coffee. I suddenly became aware of a rough voice in my ear. "Loser," it exclaimed. The voice reminded me so much of my friend's mother that I shrieked. I shouted, too terrible, as my fury began to fray. Adapt to it. I swear I heard footsteps behind me when I turned around and entered the building. My friend chuckled when I told her about it over the phone. She instructed me to pretend as if nobody was there, because her mother detested being neglected, even by tyrants. She informed me she had a feeling her mother's ghost was still around and was sorry that I was taking the brunt of it. I was taken aback by how composed she was. I tried my best to ignore the activities for the remainder of the week. On the final day, it seemed like she wanted to send me off with a bang. Otherwise, it was all footsteps, murmurs, and creaking doors. I felt a prickly sensation on the back of my neck as I was taking the last of my clothes out of the dryer. I swear that as I turned back, I saw a pair of eyes staring at me from within the cabinet over the dryer. I sprang open the door, supposing it may have been a rat or something. The eyes vanished, but I immediately noticed a foul odor. When I overheard an evil chuckle, I panicked. I was very relieved to leave that residence, which I only ever go to when my friend is there. Stop house sitting now. The incident between my brother and Krista, his former girlfriend, is real. We all shared a house back then with my parents, and my brother wanted to start saving money so they could leave after experiencing some financial hardship. When she was a little girl, Krista developed paranormal abilities. Even though it was evident that after they moved in, things would change, I knew those changes wouldn't be for the better since the vibe was darker. The fact that it appeared as though someone or something was constantly watching from the shadows made the situation much more terrifying. At night, it got worse. I always felt uneasy whenever I saw Krista, whether it was running into her in the corridor or seeing her enter the room. She clearly had a peculiar aura or eerie mood surrounding her. However, I'm not sure if it was because she had previously told me about her abilities. My brother had just completed using his Xbox Kinect, which casts green dots all around when the incident happened. He slept off, and when he later awoke, He noticed an unsettling reflection on the TV. The problem was that the shadowy figure, who was standing at the end of his bed, was detected by the Xbox Connect. As the person approached and stood next to him on the side of the bed, he freaked out. It was gone when Krista woke. I made the decision to leave the light on after my brother informed me what had occurred. I was extremely relieved when they ultimately relocated to Ohio, especially Krista, who I think was the driving force behind it. She was always a touch weird and had previously acknowledged that she saw things that weren't of this world. Therefore, I'm confident that she was responsible for bringing forth the dark figure. I was open to the paranormal, but that encounter and others proved to be too much for me, like a never-ending nightmare. My childhood home, where I currently reside, was constructed in 1931. Mom claimed that even in the summer, the attic gave her a cold feeling, which made her dislike it. I used to smile and look up towards the corner of the living room when I was a newborn, she claimed. Evidently, I'd gurgle and babble merrily as well. Mom claimed I had a fake companion when I was 3 years old, but Jay comes to mind. We would talk for ages, and I enjoyed his company. When I eventually walked up to the attic on my own one day, I too had the eerie feeling. I got lucky. Dad had left the steps extended, and I didn't trip as I climbed up them. Jay assured me that I didn't need to be concerned since his mother was watching out for him, but he wouldn't say from whom. Mom once caught me hushing and gazing up into the attic. When she inquired about my activities, I informed her that Jay resided in the upper region. She kept saying that it was all in my head. It wasn't until my aunt mentioned that she had been awakened by whispers that she noticed a shadow in the corner of her room. My parents conducted some investigation after she told them what had happened and learned that the guy who had constructed the mansion many years before had gone insane and killed his wife and child without cause. When we learned that the young boy's name was Jay, we were all surprised. The thing about still residing here is that my younger brother lately started conversing with the attic. He's become friends with Jay as well. And Jay and I both understood that the terrifying presence is actually the murdering father. Thankfully, the mother manages to keep him at distance. I've had this repeating nightmare since I was 7 years old. It's unsettling because it's about a creature who inhabits my room's mirrors, and because I kept having nightmares about it after moving away to attend college. At first, the dream merely appeared out of the blue. The dream begins with me waking up and turning to gaze at the mirror hanging on the back of my door. I can make out a malicious being standing above me, gazing back at the mirror with ominous eyes while squatting in the reflection. They switch between green and yellow. The creature's large mouth, which is crammed with razor-sharp fangs, and long, matted hair is its most terrifying features. When I awoke, I was so terrified that I turned on the TV to distract myself. When I told my mother that it had eventually subsided, she removed the mirror. My bed was on the other side of the room when I was a senior in college and had a room with its own bathroom. I tried to ignore the fact that I could see the mirror from my bed, even though it disturbed me. A second mirror was located on the door that opened up to the dorm's corridor. The chair and table in my room were reflected in the bathroom mirror on the first night I was there. And I experienced the same dream again. This time, when I awoke in a state that resembled a dream, the creature stood next to me in bed, staring at me through the mirror with the same eerie smile and unsettling fangs and eyes. When I got out of bed, I did what I always do and turned on the TV. Fortunately, the monster had disappeared, so I got up and locked the bathroom door to have a decent night's rest. I experienced the same dream the night after, except I saw the creature in the other mirror on the door. The monster, who I later discovered to be a female, was grinning at me with her dreadful fangs. The dream again alters at this point. She rises from her prone position and exits the mirror's field of vision, moving toward my bed and directly at me. After being awakened by my screams, I turned on the TV. I got out of bed and used paper and tape to conceal the mirror. That night, I didn't get back to sleep. I accepted my boyfriend's invitation to spend the night at his house the next night. But I went to bed early since I was so exhausted. Fair enough. I experienced the dream and found the mirror by my boyfriend's ladder when I awoke. I witnessed the beast ascending the stairway that goes to his bed in order to reach me. I asked my boyfriend to drive me back to my dorm because I was so worn out, afraid, and angry. Now, when I go, I cover every mirror, but what scares me is that any time I mention this, the cover comes off the mirror. Coincidence? My elder sister, who is now 21, returned home when she had a lot of problems with substance addiction, a failed relationship, and depression while I was in my early teens. My sister slept on the extra bed in my room when we shared a second-floor apartment. One night, my sister and I were sleeping in the dark room with our heads positioned across from each other in the bed opposite mine. I was initially sleeping, and when I started to wake up, I felt odd. I felt as though I was confined to my own body. I had trouble breathing and couldn't even move. I saw a shadowy apparition on my chest as I opened my eyes. I screamed in despair as I felt it crush me like a big weight. I couldn't move, but I could swivel my head just enough to gaze at my sister and signal for aid. She was screaming, sitting up in bed, and gazing back at me when I freaked out, waking up both of our parents. As they entered, we thoroughly inspected the space but found nothing. As my sister sat up and shouted, I was horrified to learn that she had seen the dreadful monster on my chest. While it never happened again, I always get a shiver when I think about it. Sometimes, my sister says to me, she wonders whether the shadowy figure was a manifestation of her own shadow, which had almost overcome her. Mom said that a demon could have been attempting to move from her body to mine but failing. Even while I'm relieved it didn't, it's still quite unsettling. My parents went out to supper when I was 17 and still residing at home, but I choose not to join them. I didn't want to miss a wonderful program I really like watching. As I waited for my performance to start, I sat down on the couch and watched a phony program. My dog then sprang onto the sofa, knocking the remote to the ground. I was confused when it wouldn't function because it didn't fall very far and landed on the plush carpet. The TV wouldn't respond even when I pushed the buttons violently in an attempt to manually change the channels. Then, from the TV, I could hear a loud whooshing sound that sounded like a strong wind blast. I was unable to turn on the TV again after it had already shut off. The same thing occurred in each of the other TV-equipped rooms when I visited there. They continued to shut off with a loud whoosh. My girlfriend who lives nearby told me she wasn't experiencing any cable problems when I contacted her. Mom's little TV switched on when I entered the kitchen. It operated for a short while before going blank with a whoosh. To get to my room, which is located at the highest corner of our home and just below the main attic area, I stomped up the stairs. The attic is only used for storage. I periodically went to check on the televisions, but they were still not functioning. I nearly leaped out of my skin when I heard the whooshing again almost an hour later. But my room didn't have a TV. The sound this time was coming from the attic. I realized. We don't have a TV up there, so that frightened me out. Despite losing my fury and wanting to sleep, I made the decision to go up there. I could not believe what I saw as I opened the door. In the center of the floor, there was a TV from the 1990s. That was something I had never seen before. And what frightened me the most was that it was making the same whooshing noise as the others. As I realized that it wasn't even plugged in, I was on the verge of passing out, but it kept turning on and off. I rushed to my room and waited for my folks instead of delaying. I was concerned that they could believe I damaged every TV in the house. When I contacted Mom, she promised to look into it when they came home. I went back up to the attic an hour later and was shocked to see that it had been turned off. I sent her up to inspect the attic when my parents got home since the other TVs weren't functioning. When I discovered that there was no TV at all, I was astounded. Also, every TV in the home was in great working order. My family still makes fun of me for how crazy they believe I am. I don't mind saying that I'm currently too afraid to watch TV alone. They seem to like that these stories will leave you with more questions than answers. They are a reminder that sometimes the truth is much darker and more mysterious than we ever imagined. Join us next time on Scary Sagas for other spine-chilling true stories.